Just an idea, a video that accurately summarizes and explains depersonalization realization for those who don't suffer it, to show to friends, family, therapists, etc. Perhaps it already exists. Okay, so I'm going to do you one even better. Not only am I going to explain depersonalization realization for people that have not experienced it, but I'm also going to give 6 different things that you need to do to make the DPDR sufferer more comfortable and to help them with their recovery. Okay. Because if that's you and this is your daughter or your son or your brother or your sister or your mom, your dad, your coworker, maybe you're a therapist and you don't deal with DPDR clients very often and you're just like, how the heck am I going to help this person? Or a doctor, a teacher. There could be so many people that are watching this video, but you're wanting some step-by-step instructions. I will do my very best to tell you what I've learned after working with thousands of DPDR sufferers over the last 8 years. There are specific things that really do trigger them and make their recovery a lot harder if you're not mindful of these things. And there's also some things that you can do to help them as well, although it's probably not going to be what you would expect. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into it. Also click the like, help this get out into the algorithm. So what is depersonalization realization? So it's not really the presence of something as much as it is the absence of something. So whenever your nervous system gets overwhelmed, this is technically called traumatic stress. Your brain, body, and nervous system start to prepare as if you're about to be eaten by a lion, because if you're going to be eaten, you might as well not feel it. It's kind of like nature's last gift, basically. If you're going to be eaten by the lion, let's make this as numb and painless as possible. And so there's a shutdown of the brain regions that are responsible for you feeling connected to your body, self, and environment. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps a Score book, which I do recommend if you're the loved one that you read that to educate yourself. He calls this the mohawk of self-awareness because it's a series of brain structures that resemble a mohawk haircut. It kind of goes from ear to ear, not straight front to back. But anyway, it's a series of brain structures that look like a mohawk haircut. And when these brain structures are not lighting up, you're going to feel out of body, right? You're going to feel like you're detached from the material world. There's also a part of the brain that's responsible for our perception of time that starts to go offline. Time can start to feel distorted. Also, the prefrontal cortex, logical, critical, creative, contextual thinking, decision making, intentional awareness, that starts to go not completely offline, but just really diminished in functionality. That's why they can't think, they can't concentrate. And there's also usually all kinds of anxious thoughts, catastrophic fears that come with that. But anyway, they literally feel like death. And that's because their nervous system is preparing for death. And you may be thinking, as the loved one, whatever that looks like, well, we've been to the doctor and the doctor says that there's nothing wrong. Okay. So how could it be that severe? We did the blood test, we did the CT scans, maybe even had a neurological examination. We did this test, that test, this test, and it's all coming back clear. And so there might be a tendency to think that because there's nothing medically wrong, that it can't be that severe. But this is number one, the first thing that you need to be mindful of in the list of 6 things. I think this is a good segue into that. You have to understand that what's happening on the outside is not reflective of what's happening on the inside. And your loved one has learned to go through the motions because they have to survive. And they may emulate the mannerisms of normality and smile and nod and, everything seems fine. But on the inside, I'm not just saying like they feel like death. Like that's not even a great description. Their body and nervous system are preparing as if they are dying. Like these symptoms happen, like as long as people's death is an instant, like most people are going to experience these symptoms right before death. Okay. It technically depends on how each person's nervous system chooses to respond, but statistically, over between 50 and 75% of people will experience depersonalization realization at some point in their life, where they feel out of body. Everything feels fake and dreamlike. With out of body being depersonalization, it's not a full out of body experience. You feel like you're on the verge of an out of body experience. You look at your hands, they don't feel like they're your own. You look in the mirror, you feel like you're looking at a stranger. You kind of feel like you're just outside of yourself and a little bit to the left. But you look around with derealization and everything feels like it's a movie. It feels like it's a dream. But literally, over half of all human beings will experience these symptoms at some point in their life, but it's usually a few seconds. It's usually a few minutes, usually less than 1 month. Okay. But 1 to 2% of the population will experience these symptoms more than 1 month for several months or several years. Okay. But what I'm saying is, even if you haven't heard of these symptoms, they are extremely common. And the reason why you probably haven't heard of them is, number one, they're impossible to describe outside of an analogy. Like, I feel like my life is a movie, or I feel like I am watching myself on a video camera. I feel like there's a wall of glass between me and reality, things like that. And a lot of people don't have these analogies, and they will say things like, I just don't feel like myself, or I just don't feel normal, or, they just can't really describe it. But number two, there isn't enough education about these symptoms. There's a huge, huge gap of understanding with most licensed mental professionals, most doctors, and especially most people in general. And I think because the symptoms only happen for a few seconds, a few minutes, a few days for most people, they don't need to look up a term, right? Like, they're not interested in finding out what that was. They just connect it to some overwhelming experience and then they move on. But there's not a lot of education, okay? But you need to understand that your loved one literally feels the worst that they've ever felt in their life. And I will tell you, as somebody who went through depersonalization, realization, 2 years, 24/7, 5 years off and on, those symptoms were the most terrifying thing that I've ever experienced in my life. Like, I mean, if you look closely, you'll be able to, just realized that was still on there. You'll be able to see kind of scars on my head. Like, I've had kids throw rocks at me. I have been beat up several times before I learned jiu-jitsu. Okay. But I've been terrified over so many different things in life, and nothing is more terrifying than feeling like you are not connected to your body, to yourself, or to your environment. It's impossible to explain. But you just need to have a lot of grace. And I know logically, the doctor's test came back fine. They look fine, so they must be fine. But you can't use logic, and you just have to trust. And I'm giving you my own personal experience as well as the experience of working with thousands of people over the last 8 years. They're going through hell. You just have to, there's experiential knowledge, and then there's experiential knowledge, and then there is hypothetical knowledge. What is well, I'm drawing a blank here. I looked it up. So theoretical knowledge, conceptual knowledge, intellectual knowledge, whatever you want to call it. But basically, you've either experienced something or you can kind of research it and do your best to intellectually understand it. And if you haven't experienced these symptoms, that's really the best that you can have is, intellectual or theoretical knowledge. But I promise you, if you haven't experienced it, there's just no way to fully grasp how terrifying these symptoms are. So even if you do have a good grasp theoretically, you're just going to have to accept that it is one of the most, if not the most terrifying things that somebody could possibly go through. Okay? So let's move on to the next thing. Number 2, you need to make them feel safe to experience these symptoms around you. I know that you might be frustrated that you don't know how to help them. Maybe this is the first time in your life that you haven't been able to help them, and the general advice that you're giving them is not working. And you love them, and sometimes love can manifest in anger, right? You're frustrated, not at them, but because they're not getting the help that they need. And especially if this is your child, like, you would do anything for them, or if it's your brother or sister, mom and dad, or just whoever, or even, a patient or a client or whatever, you care about them. And it's frustrating whenever you don't know how to help them. I would encourage you to get alone and feel that emotion. The way that we process emotion is we intentionally feel it. We shut off logic, shut off thinking, and just let our body process as it needs to. Let the emotions get to max intensity, even if you need to scream into a pillow, whatever you need to do. Cry, be angry, sad, whatever it is. I would encourage you to get alone and really face those emotions. Don't try to understand them, just face and feel them, because when you get around your loved one, if you express those emotions, especially anger, it's going to create an additional layer of stress to an already very stressful situation. Remember, their nervous system is overwhelmed. Now, that happened either to a singular situation, which is called a major trauma. It's like a lightning strike, a sudden situation that overwhelms their nervous system, and they had a really calm history. Or it's more of a complex trauma situation where they had been stressed out, very anxious for a long period of time, and you could see it as like filling up a cup of water, and then eventually their nervous system got overwhelmed and started to prepare to be eaten by a lion in the freeze response. So, and I know you hear the word trauma, you're thinking of natural disaster, loss of a loved one, car accident. This is an antiquated 20th century understanding of trauma. We now know in the 21st century, even though most people haven't been updated on this, that trauma is not an event. It is a state of overwhelming stress in the nervous system. Whenever our brain perceives threat or there's an actual threat, the very first thing that we look to calm ourselves down is other people. If we don't find regulation from other people, then we go into fight or flight response. Then if our nervous system feels too trapped to fight or flee, then we go into a trauma response. It's also called the freeze response. It's literally playing dead, right? You've heard playing possum or a deer in headlights whenever they get frozen. This is a mammalian defense mechanism that's designed to convey to a predator that it's dead, so it loses interest and walks away. But just in case the predator doesn't walk away, mammals will become very numb and dissociated, so that way they don't feel it if they get eaten by Tony the Tiger or whatever. Okay, but with that being said, I want you to make sure that you don't let your loved one feel the emotion that you're experiencing because of how frustrated you are that they're going through this and you can't help them, okay? So get alone, feel the emotions, and then verbally tell them it is safe for you to experience symptoms around me. I remember whenever I was going through symptoms and I was around some people where I did not feel safe. And again, my nervous system was already overwhelmed and your loved one's nervous system is already overwhelmed. The last thing that you need is to add another layer of stress where they're constantly on guard trying to act normal around you because they're terrified that if they experience symptoms that you're going to get angry at them. And again, it may be anger coming from love, or hey, some of you may just be getting genuinely frustrated with them, and that especially will make the person more stressed out, and it will actually backfire on you because they will be less likely to recover if you do that. But regardless of where the anger is coming from, or really any emotion at all, it's going to stress them out, okay? So emotions are valid, they're important, but you feel them, face them privately, so that way you can be an emotional rock for your loved one during this very tough season, okay? So, and then verbally tell them, hey, you can experience whatever you need to experience around me, okay? If you need to have a panic attack or DPDR is getting really bad or whatever's happening, just know that I love you, I care about, maybe if it's appropriate to say I love you, obviously there are situations depending on who the loved one is where it wouldn't be, but it's safe for you to experience this, okay? 3, make sure to watch until the end because you need to do all these things, all right? Don't offer general advice, okay? We are dealing with traumatic stress. This is like the deepest defense mechanism that we could access, which study the polyvagal theory, especially if you're a therapist watching this, to kind of get an understanding of that as far as why our nervous system draws on different autonomic responses at different times. But like this is the last ditch effort of survival right before you get eaten. Like this is a very serious state. And what I hear my clients say, and this definitely happened with me all the time whenever I was suffering, is people will try to give them very general advice. Oh, just go for a walk, or you just need a vacation. Just take a couple days off, or just don't think about it, right? Or especially, if you have a tendency to suppress your own emotions, maybe that's what your mom and dad taught you, or maybe you just kind of mirrored that because your parents didn't, or caregiver didn't process their emotions. Like, you're like, oh, well, don't worry about these emotions. Don't feel those. I literally have my clients tell me that their parents or loved ones tell them that, like, that is opposite. We actually need them to feel their emotions. That's one of the ways that we're going to downregulate their nervous system. But you just have to accept that this is a situation that you don't know how to help with, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you don't have a lot of great advice, generally speaking. But whenever you try to help with a very particular issue like this, with general things, you're going to end up making things worse, because whenever they try those things and it doesn't work, it's just going to make them more frustrated, okay? So imagine that somebody had a very particular heart issue that required a very particular surgeon, and that person went to an urgent care facility where it was like a nurse practitioner. Maybe that nurse practitioner is really, really great with, colds and, all kinds of, general ailments, but they are not equipped to handle that specific of a heart issue. And if they tried to fix that with general things, not only is it not going to help the person with their heart issue, but it's actually going to frustrate them, because now they've done all these things that didn't work. And so it's probably not a perfect analogy, but you get what I'm saying. Like, this is not just general stress. This is not just a bad day. This is not them just feeling a little depressed. This is literally nervous system overwhelm. Okay. And it requires a multi-layered approach in order to fix this. And check out the 5 Shifts Masterclass link in the first pinned comment, as well as the description that shows you the 5 shifts that your loved one needs to make, whether they work with me or whoever. These are the things that they need to focus on. But there's a lot of layers as to why their nervous system is overwhelmed and staying overwhelmed that we need to address. And general things are probably not going to do a whole lot of anything. And just because that works for you, you're assuming that they're in the same state that you're in whenever you go through hard things. And just because those things work for you, that it's going to work for them. Again, on the outside, it doesn't seem like much is going on. And so that's probably why logically you're thinking, okay, well, surely if they just go for a walk or take a deep breath or take a day off or a vacation or this thing or this, or just don't think about it, then it'll go away. I get it. But I'm telling you, it's not going to work, and it's going to create more stress. Number 4. Very, very important. This is probably one of the number one things. You need to stay calm yourself. I know sometimes in the midst of wanting to help the person that's suffering, we end up not taking care of ourselves. For me to be able to do this full time, I mean, I spend hours a day doing self-regulation skills and self-care. I have to be almost flawless with it. I'm not perfect, but like, I have like good sleep, nutrition, hydration, proper breaks, lots of relaxation. But if you're on an airplane and it's going down, one of the first things they tell you is first put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on somebody else, because in the midst of trying to help somebody else, you may end up, going bye-bye in that case. That's probably not a perfect example, but you know what I'm saying. You can't take care of anybody else unless you take care of yourself. And you being stressed out is affecting them. So one of the ways that people get healed from these symptoms, one of many ways, is something called co-regulation, which is where through positive facial expressions, positive vocal tonality, positive body language, we communicate safety, validating their experience, building hope in them. I wouldn't expect you to be able to do that very much. Co-regulation is, in my opinion, a skill set for this type of stress that they're dealing with. It is something that if you haven't been taught how to do it, it's very unlikely that you'll be able to do it very effectively, although it's possible for sure. But we do need you to be generally positive around them, okay? And if you're very stressed out, they're going to feel that. Most communication is nonverbal, right? So I'm communicating to you not just through what I'm saying, but how I'm saying it, and my facial expressions, my body language, okay? And if you're stressed out, your facial expressions, your body language, your vocal tonality are going to reflect that, and it's going to make them more stressed out. And you're also not going to be able to think, okay? You're going to be in reaction mode, and you're not going to be able to strategize to even apply these things or other things to help your loved one. So, with that being said, do progressive muscle relaxation. Do progressive muscle relaxation in a hot bath. Do 4-7 breathing or 4-7-8 breathing. Just get away for a little bit and do something fun. This is especially if you're like the parent or somebody that's like really, really involved in this loved one's life. You might have become all consumed with this to the point where like you're not even taking care of yourself. So one of the best things you can do to help your loved one is help yourself, okay? And I just thought of another one, sorry, that I want to add. So this will actually end up being 7, but I've got 7 hours of meetings and I'm just kind of quickly doing this video. I saw that comment, so forgive me for the lack of preparation. But you have to, the next thing, this will be number 5, is you have to accept that they are a free will agent, and as much as you want them to heal, they have to choose to heal. And that right there, that is the hardest part of this, especially if you're, again, like a parent or something, or just somebody who's deeply involved in this person's life. I've been doing this for 8 years, and I have had to accept that not everybody has suffered enough to the point that they are willing to address all the things happening in their body. There's a lot of tension, adrenaline, emotion that they need to release. There's a lot of lifestyle adjustments that they need to make. They need to face their triggers. They need to get an education about this to detach fear and shame from symptoms. It's not easy. And especially in the freeze response, it's just that. It's the freeze response. It's also called the immobilization response. So not only do they feel like death, but it feels safest to stay frozen. It feels natural and safest to do nothing, okay? I have to sneeze. Hold on a second. Okay, I just sneezed. We have a dog that's been sleeping in our bed, and I told my wife it has to stop, and yet every day that little dog's up in there. Okay, but anyway, with that being said, everybody, like, pain is life's great teacher, okay? Everybody has to suffer to a certain degree before they will be willing to confront life's challenges that are keeping them from seeing results in their life. And everybody would say, if you ask them, oh yeah, I want to beat DPDR. But everybody would also say, I want to make $1 million. But how many people are actually putting in the work to make $1 million? It's very, very difficult to make $1 million. Very difficult. It's doable, but it's extremely difficult. And that's like recovery from this. It's very, very doable. It's actually quite simple in concept, but it is very difficult in execution. And the problem that I see a lot of times with loved ones that have somebody who's suffering is they want that person to recover more than that person does. Again, not in what they're saying, but in what they're willing to execute on. Because again, they're going to say, oh, I'm more miserable than I've ever been. I want to beat this more than anything. But I cannot tell you how many people, and this is one reason why we became so particular with who we let into our program, how many people said that they wanted to recover, but whenever it actually came down to it, they didn't. And what we found is whenever we're on a call with somebody, like, and I don't do the calls anymore, I have a team that does that, but whenever they're interested in working with us, if there's like, of course, everybody's going to be skeptical because they've tried all these things that haven't worked, and they're going to be hesitant in all these things to a degree. But like, especially whenever I used to take the calls, but my team, they can hear it in their voice whenever they're ready. They're like, you know what? I've literally tried acceptance. I've tried distraction, talk therapy. As much as I love talk therapy, that's almost always on the application whenever we work with somebody, because it's good, but not enough most of the time to heal these symptoms. I've tried supplements. I've tried, hitting the gym. I've tried, I could go on and on and on. And I don't want to list more things. I don't want you to think that these things are bad in and of themselves. But again, a lot of these things are good, but not enough. But they're like, I am so, like, my life is falling apart. I am ready to crush this. But if we get on the call with somebody, it's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just, like, and my team will even ask them, like, are you ready to give this your all? And it's not even about what they say. We listen for how they say it. And every single time that we've let somebody into our program, whenever we kind of intuitively knew that they weren't at that place yet, they just didn't put in the work. And so all that I'm saying is, you would assume that if somebody was suffering this much, that they would automatically be willing to put forth the effort to get through this. But in that person's defense, they're coming out of the freeze response, number one. So it's not even just a matter of they haven't experienced enough pain to change, which is a human thing. They're in a response that makes them feel safest by doing nothing. Think about it. If this is feigned death, playing dead, movement would get you eaten. Like if my cat's playing with a mouse and that mouse starts to move after it's been laying there for a little bit playing dead, it's going to get eaten. And so literally in that person's defense, mobilization feels dangerous. To you, it's like, hey, just move on with your life and do this and do this. It's not that simple. It's very, very difficult. Like that's why there usually has to be an extraordinary amount of suffering that happens, because they're going to have to get to a point where it's like my life either continues to completely fall apart, or I have to act contrary to what feels safest, which is staying frozen. And sometimes there has to be a lot of pain to get to that point, and it is the most heartbreaking part of my job. Because I could know that I can help somebody, but if they're not at that place or they are ready to recover, there's nothing that I could do. And that's the last thing I'll say on this is, you have to accept that only they can want to beat this. And sometimes you have to just let it be okay that they're not ready yet and just love them anyway. Okay? And just let pain do its job. All right. Number 6, allow space to talk about symptoms. I'm not one of those people that would teach that you can't talk about symptoms ever. It's just like, how could you not talk about this a little bit, right? It's the most terrifying thing that they've ever been through. But if it becomes obsessive, gently redirect. They're going to have a tendency, your loved one is going to have a tendency to just sit and obsess over the symptoms all day long, okay? So give them a space to talk about it for a little bit. Doesn't have a time frame necessarily. I mean, a few minutes, but gently redirect. And whenever I say gently redirect, I mean, yeah, no, okay, I understand this is horrible, but you want to go for a walk? Let's do a 4-7 breaths together. Again, you learn some relaxation skills, learn some self-regulation skills. It will really, really help them, because now you're doing something together. Hey, let's do this together. I'm kind of dealing with my own stress. Like, let's help regulate together. Hey, let's go for a walk and practice just being in the present moment for a little bit. Right? So, yeah, that's what I would say. Lastly, number 7, educate yourself about the nervous system, okay? You can follow my videos. I try to give a basic understanding of the nervous system all the time. There's a really good book called The Body Keeps the Score. If you're the sufferer, I don't recommend you read this necessarily, because the first chapter is very, very triggering for somebody who's going through symptoms. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk talks about his time in the VA hospital, and I wish he wouldn't have put that in there, honestly. But it's a good book for you to kind of get a basic understanding of what's happening, particularly with trauma. And he literally shows brain scans of people that are in a traumatized state, shows these brain regions shutting down that I've been talking about, the timekeeper, the Mohawk of self-awareness, and all kinds of stuff that will kind of give you an understanding of what's going on, okay? And it really shows the importance of a body-based approach, which is what I teach. So, yeah, educate yourself, because it's going to allow you to understand that this is a complex issue that is not going to be solved with general things. It will also give you more compassion for that person, because again, on the outside, everything looks fine and the doctors have said everything's fine. And so you're going to start to see like, okay, wait a second, like this may be invisible to me, but this is a very real experience that they're going through. And even if you don't have experiential understanding, you'll be able to have some philosophical or conceptual, theoretical knowledge that will help give you more compassion and grace for what they're going through. Okay. Pretty much it. Okay. Again, forgive me for the lack of preparation. I'm trying to do a video every day, and sometimes I got to just throw some stuff together, but I've had this video requested for a long time. And this is what I would tell my clients if they asked me for how their loved one can help them through these symptoms. And so I hope that helped you. Again, smash the like button. I am a smaller channel, so I need help getting this out there. Subscribe if you or your loved one are going through these symptoms. And again, watch the 5 Shifts Masterclass. Link in the first pinned comment, as well as the description, will show you the 5 shifts that you need to make to crush these symptoms, whether it's with me or whoever you work with. But there is an application. There's a button that says apply now if you'd like to apply for us to take a look at your situation. But the only thing that we ask, by the way, if you are a loved one who's watching this, you don't apply. It needs to be the person. Okay, maybe send them a link to my channel or something. And if they want to apply, that's fine, but we don't take on clients where it's a parent or the loved one wanting their person or their loved one to recover. We don't do that because, again, that person has to be ready to recover. That's the only thing that I would ask, okay? That is it. I hope this helped you, and hope you have an awesome day.